Trump was set up, the assassination attempt was absolutely an inside job, and I'm going to show you how. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity. One of my superpowers is I just dive deep in when things are fast breaking. This is one of these fast breaking moments. We have to capture all of the data, all the evidence, and do our best job possible to make sense of it. Here's the thing. You can't really make sense of what happened to Trump's assassination attempt there in Butler, Pennsylvania a couple days ago, besides what it says in red there. They let it happen. This is my analysis for July 16th. This is my scouting report. Part one here in public. Part two, I'm going to go a lot deeper and show you that I think there were two shooters. So let's start with this. I mean, obviously we know a couple things, right? Here's this guy, this doofus, he's crawling around. People are pointing at him, right? And we're going to have to trust that actually he was the shooter in this particular case. We don't know. We still are lacking a lot of data, a lot of evidence. So everything I'm going to tell you today needs a grain of salt because I don't have any crime scene photos. I don't have anything. So we're piecing this together from out here in the cheap seats like we have to do with big events because, as you know, our authorities lie, gaslight, hold things back. And if it's anything that turns out to be embarrassing, they will not tell us. Now, this is the crazy part. You see that ladder down there? That's the ladder. That's his body there on the roof, right there, right? And I think that's his backpack, that other dark thing, and that's his gun. So you see a longer thing, that's the body. Then there's a gun placed 4 or 5 roof panels away. Those lines on the roof, looks like a raised metal seam roof. But there's that ladder circled in red. And there are a couple of cop cars there because this is the building the police are using, the local police, who somehow got charged with taking care of this all-important spot. At any rate, this is the building they're using for their headquarters, for their TAC team, right? And so I'm going to get into that view a little bit more because there's something astonishing. Remember, we look both at what is there and what is not there. There's something missing from this picture we're going to have to talk about. Now, New York Post reporting here today that would-be Trump assassin was spotted by cops twice, 26 minutes before he wounded the ex-president and killed a retired fire chief, okay, comparator. So anyway, this is what they're reporting. What does this article actually say? It says, well, a clear picture is emerging of the exact timeline of staggering failures. There comes a point where the failures are so staggering, you can't assign them as being failures anymore. Your default mode has to be, which is where I am, which is I am positive this was an inside job. It was allowed to happen. And somebody's going to have to prove to me that it was failures, not the other way around, because just too staggering. That enabled an armed 20-year-old man with no military training to scale a building loaded with counter-sniper team cops in broad daylight and come within a hair's breadth of killing former President Donald Trump. Thomas Matthew Crooks was spotted at least twice by cops 26 minutes before he rained bullets on the Pennsylvania rally crowd. And I have, again, in part two of this, we're going to be talking about how the later part of this, that it wasn't just him. And we've got data for that. As you know, I come with receipts. I got data. And if the data changes, I'll change my mind. It's how we roll. But this is what we do. The Beaver County Emergency Services Unit, okay, which traveled to Butler County for the Trump rally, noticed him on the roof. Notice Crooks, it should say, not Cooks, on the roof. Took a picture of him and reported it around 5:45 p.m. Now, what is a Beaver County Emergency Services Unit? It's these guys. This is coming right off of their website. They got a video. You got these guys in these TAC team stuff. They got good weapons. They got good optics. They got nice helmets. They got giant armored thingies, whatever. So I'm just saying that this is a fairly well-equipped, fairly well-trained, because that whole video down there is just them training, going out, doing live fire exercises, all that. Now, this is what's crazy. They reported around 5:45 that there's this dude, Crooks. What do we do about that? And it was at 6:11 that Mr. Trump turned his right hand, gestures towards a screen and a chart showing statistics on the border crossing. And if he hadn't turned his head at just that last instant, we would be having a very different conversation because, of course, he would be dead. And then around the same time, several rally attendees were down there noticing a man with a gun on the roof for several minutes. They're pointing. Remember, we pointed this out in an earlier one. I'm sure you've seen it. that there were citizens saying, dude with a gun on the roof. You know, it's crazy because This guy's like really obvious. You can see him from the ground. This is somebody on their cell phone, right? This isn't even hard. And we learned later that a cop, as yet unnamed, went up the ladder that we just showed you. We'll show you more of that ladder down there. And saw this Crooks guy who pointed a rifle at him. And then the cop went back down the ladder, I guess, or whatever the story is. And then what? Like, I get it. If you're just a cop who's out there and you just got a sidearm, some guy's got a rifle, well, then what you do is you get on your radio and you call a real cop, one with a long rifle and maybe some kit and some gear. And I'm going to show you more about that in just a second. So we have to believe somehow that these people were occupying this building right underneath where this guy Crooks came. And by the way, this Crooks guy, he would have had to have known the ladder was there. He would have had to walk to that ladder, at least with a backpack and a gun. He would have had to have climbed up that ladder with the gun slung 40 feet to the side of the door of the building the police are using as a headquarters. Not just any police, these guys. These guys are there, okay? As well as other police. So we're supposed to believe that these guys as well made a phone call at 5:45, reported it. Like, hey, there's a guy on the roof of the building we're supposed to be guarding. Like, who'd they call? Right? You know, the ice cream man? I don't get it. I don't, like, this just doesn't, listen, that's the point. None of this adds up. This doesn't even make the first bit of sense, right? Okay. And about 42 seconds after the shooting began, agents were crouched over Mr. Trump and the shooter down, and then the Secret Service confirmed that personnel neutralized the shooter. Within 42 seconds of the shooting beginning, they get the thing over their earpiece that says, personnel have neutralized the shooter. How did they know? How did they know there was only one shooter? They can't have known. First, unless they knew in advance there was only one, or this was a patsy who was put up there, who then was taken out, right? Whatever the story is, you can't have known there was just one if it was a legit story, because you didn't know there was one in the first place. So you can't know that there was only one. This is logical, very simple. Remember, they stood Trump up, put a little girl in the front. She's ducking down, his head totally exposed. They didn't roll him off or pull him off the back of the podium he was on, which is 3.5, maybe 4 feet tall, where they walked him down the stairs, where they could have easily pulled him off and shielded him completely and gotten him out. But they didn't, because they got in their earpiece that personnel have neutralized the shooter. They can't have known this, right? So we're either in deep, deep incompetence, Keystone Cops time, or this was an intentional setup. And there was another shooter out there who was designed to get the job done if shooter one failed, or if the patsy failed. That's the story I'm working on. Now, here we are. This is post-shooting. We can see there's bright sunlight here. He's got his squinties going on there, the guy on the far left. But you see those guys in that gear? I already showed you who those are. These are your emergency services personnel unit guys out of the Beaver Creek County. All right, now let's turn to this, and we're going to listen in real quick because they did a good job summarizing all this.
Tonight, there are fast-moving developments after the assassination attempt. Tonight, remarkable new images here. The alleged gunman seen climbing to the roof just minutes before opening fire at that rally. You can actually hear people in the crowd yelling to an officer, pointing him out. And now we learn that law enforcement was actually using that building as a staging area, and how the gunman climbed onto the roof, the wall outside that building. And ABC's Pierre Thomas tonight with the exclusive interview with the head of the Secret Service and what she's saying now.
Stunning new video tonight showing the moment Donald Trump's would-be assassin climbed onto the roof of that building just 2 minutes before he opened fire.
Impossible.
There he is.
Hey, there he is.
Bystanders desperately trying to alert police. Authorities now using that video as part of the investigation. And tonight, ABC News has learned that heavily armed local police were stationed inside that building and missed Thomas Crooks climbing up the outside of the building to the roof. The same building was being used as a staging area for local police, according to 2 law enforcement officials. And Butler Township officials are confirming ABC News' reporting that a local police officer climbed up the roof and confronted Brooks moments before the shooting.
The officer grabbed hold of the edge of the building, pulled himself up to be able to look, and according to what he's told me, shooter turned, rifle was pointed at the officer. The officer, defensive move, kind of ducked, fell, lost his grip on the building.
Investigators tonight trying to determine whether roof access had been properly locked down. The shooter climbing seemingly unimpeded, about 400 feet from the stage, with a direct line of sight on the former president.
Take a look at what happened.
In Washington, lawmakers demanding answers, calling on the Secret Service director to appear before Congress. We sat down with Director Kim Cheadle today for an exclusive interview.
What was your reaction when you saw the events unfold on Saturday?
This is astonishing.
Shock, and then concern, obviously, for the former president. This is an event that should have never happened.
Who is most responsible for this happening?
What I would say is that the Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the former president.
So the buck stops with you?
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service. It was unacceptable, and it's something that shouldn't happen again.
The President and Homeland Security Secretary said today they had 100% confidence in you, but there are some members of Congress calling on you to resign.
I appreciate the Secretary's comments, and we're going to continue to be transparent and communicate with people.
You plan to stay on, absolutely.
I do plan to stay on.
Director Cheadle says she will not wait on an independent review of the security failure. She says she plans to make immediate changes.
Like hiring competent people, the right people for the job, who knows? So a lot to unpack in there. First, officer climbs up, sees the guy, falls, and then we're just left hanging like, well, then what? Hopefully he called a real cop with like real guns. And we saw that they had an emergency services services unit there. These are people who are trained. They train. I can show you their video. They train out on the range, live fire. They got squad tactics. I mean, these guys, they're trained. They're fully trained, right? In long rifle, and they've got the helmets and the chest plates and all the rest that are out there in their full battle rattle. Why? I mean, it's like Uvalde. Like, why would you kit up as a police officer, go out there and play bad cop, bad boy, if you're not going to like man up when the time comes? Something really doesn't add up here at all. It's very bizarre. So the level of staggering incompetence here is strong enough that Kim Cheadle really should be resigning instantly. But, you know, she probably doesn't want to, because now she can't control the investigation into what the Secret Service did or who actually was calling the shots and why they called the shots they did. These are all questions that need to be uncovered, but you can feel it, right? NBC just came out with a thing where they're saying, oh, they didn't follow their own protocols and the counter snipers could have shot if they wanted to. And we're finding out now that there were huge numbers of security lapses here. Too many to explain, way too many to explain. So here's something we're going to look at, and I'm going to take my picture away so that you can see it in its full glory. This is about, 36 seconds there. Some kind of I believe it's a helicopter. Now, what I want you to observe here, so we're flying around the building that these cops were in, that Thomas Crooks is on the top of. He's dead at this point in time. And this is presumably because there's not in bright sunlight. This is well after he's been shot dead, because we saw earlier the pictures of those 4 local cops, the 2 kitted up in full military gear and 2 standing there in standard police uniforms, standing over his body in full sunlight. And it's not full sunlight anymore. So this must be later. That's how I'm interpreting it. But notice what else you don't see here. Okay. There's his body circled in red. Here we are flying around. You can see the ladder over there to the right. Okay. There's cop cars there. There's a motorcycle, picnic table just behind the trees now. And I'm glad we have this footage here, because it allowed me to do some things in terms of subsequent analysis, exactly where he was positioned on the building, presuming his body hasn't been moved. But that's it, right? Notice what we don't, let me play that again, because here's what you don't see. Who's securing the crime scene? There's nobody standing at the bottom of that ladder. Presumably anybody could sort of walk up at this point in time and go up there and mess around with the crime scene. Where is everybody? Why is nobody at least standing at the base of that ladder over there? Why aren't there people up on the roof like taking pictures? What is even going on here? This is crazy time to me that you would have such a nationally, historically important moment. All the investigator potentials just walk away. They just leave the body there with some stuff, you know? I don't get it. I'm a little confused by what I'm seeing here. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So, But what we can see here as well is, look at that ladder there. Look how far away. That's like, there's a police car parked right in front of the ladder. Like, somehow we have to believe that Thomas Crooks walked through that whole parking lot carrying a long gun right into the face of where all the police were. Has been pointed out to them multiple times. There are people pointing and yelling about the guy. He climbs up the ladder, goes over there, gets himself all comfy and settled in, points a gun at an officer, which normally is a pretty quickly lethal event for somebody. Officer just checks out. We don't know what happens next. And then he settles in and takes some shots. That's what we're supposed to believe. Obviously, it's complete bollocks, right? And then Kim Cheadle. So her face is now going to be in Wikipedia under incompetence. I mean, she's so incompetent, she doesn't even realize her incompetence, right? This is how bad it is. Like, you expect somebody in her role to have what we'd call real world experience. You would know things like how gravity works and that sewers go under the streets and that buildings are made out of sometimes penetrable, sometimes impenetrable materials. You know, just like real world stuff, including the angles of roofs. She said that building in particular, that one that guy was on, she said, had a sloped roof at its highest point. Kim, roofs typically slope from the bottom to the highest point. It didn't have a sloped roof at its highest point. So fail one, right? And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. What the F am I even reading? What? This is part of that ABC interview. She said, and so the decision was made to secure the building from inside. Well, Kim, I'm no expert, but you can't secure a building from the inside when there's a ladder going up to the roof on the outside. I mean, again, they're treating you and me and everybody watching this like we're complete morons. Like that somehow this is an acceptable thing to say. This is how far down the rabbit hole we've gone, where assuming this is just pure incompetence, like we've reached that stage of empire where we're just at the stage where full incompetence is allowed to be Peter principled and rise up through the ranks to the point that you have complete midwits and idiots and retards running things, right? But she's so stupid, she expects you to be as stupid as she is, right? Oh yeah, we decided to secure the building from the inside because, the roof was pitched and was steep all the way to its highest point. Okay, moron lady. I measured it. It's like a 1.2 over 12 roof. Like a 12-12 is a 45-degree angle. It falls 12 inches for every 12 inches it carries, right? It's a roofing term if you're not familiar with them. This is a super shallow roof. This is the kind of, me and my buddies back in college, we would have played Frisbee on that roof, right? And maybe we'd have fallen off every so often, but that is as gentle a roof as possible. And oh yeah, you also did have your other snipers on a roof that was steeper than that. And it's kind of par for the course to have people on roofs. I don't even know what we're supposed to make of this. Okay. But this is we're in scramble mode. That's why it's so important that we capture all the data, all the information, because stuff is going to get memory hold on this. It is so deeply embarrassing because it is very clear that, here's my personal assessment, they let this happen under the full hubristic confidence that they could just then clean up the details later because they're in control of the narrative. They say stuff, you have to wrestle with it as if it's true. Oh, the decision was made to secure the building from the inside. There, wrestle with that. Like, nope, don't have to. That's stupid. You're a moron. Absolutely. Okay, but then how about this? So she said, the buck stops with me, but she said, quote, in this particular instance, we did share support for that particular site and that the United States Secret Service, that's USSS, was responsible for the inner perimeter. And when we sought assistance from our local counterparts for the outer perimeter, there was local police in that building, and there was local police in the area that were responsible for the outer perimeter of the building. So she's just trying to throw the local police onto the wheels of the bus. Listen, they clearly there's somebody, I need some answers from them too, no question. But it wasn't their responsibility. Outer perimeter is not 140 yards away, right? 420 to 430 feet is where that shooter was positioned. That's not an outer perimeter, right? For anybody who uses weapons, that's a chip shot, right? So that was something, that's part one. Part two, as I'm going to show you, of that particular, my complaint about that, such as it is that they positioned one of their sniper teams in a way such that their actual view of exactly the portion of the roof where this shooter was, where Thomas, the Crooks guy was, they couldn't see it. They were occluded by a tree. Nobody does that. But I just want Kim to also remember there's reasons that people like me and other people who know their history are a little bit suspicious of the Secret Service, because remember back in the day, Kennedy, see that guy chugging along on the right with his hand on the car? His job, and the guy on the other side, their job is to pace that car and jog along, and they're called off right before Kennedy's car. Look at that. It's like, what the, right? Right before his car takes the corner and goes down that fateful shooting alley that he went down, they called off the Secret Service, right? Where's that, Mr. Warren Commission? Look at this thing. Look at this. Jog, jog, jog. That's their job. They're supposed to jog the whole way. That's their job. That guy right there under the arrow calls them off, says, stop, get back here. And this guy's like, what? Since when does that ever happen? Secret Service. So you don't exactly have like what we would call an awesome track record when it comes to protecting presidents or ex-presidents, right? So you got, listen, Secret Service, you got to understand, you have to be more transparent, not less of each of those things. You have to be above and beyond ever since this happened, because obviously you showed the willingness to be part of the execution of a president already. I mean, that's settled history at this point in time. And by the way, if anybody wants to dispute that, you may not until we get those documents released from the National Archives, which for some reason remain hidden from view. Wonder what the reason could be, right? By the way, they're going to try very hard to mothball all of this stuff too. That's why we're working so hard to get the story and get it now and get it right. So now we have to track the shots, because this is where the story gets really interesting. And again, I shouldn't be the one doing this, but this is how it is. Somebody's got to. And it's not happening out there in the world of investigations at this point. So let me get my laser pointer out and let's start here. So for some orientation, this is where Trump was standing. If you've seen any of the videos of him grabbing his ear, he's right here. There's a big stand of people right behind him, bunch of cameras here shooting that shot, nicely framed shot. And then there were stands to the right and stands to the left, stage, well, I guess if we oriented the other way, that would be stage right and that would be stage left over here. So there was an injured person that came out of this stand, and here's where Comparator was killed, was right about almost pretty much where that was, and that dot is. And then there's another gentleman who was critically injured who's lying right here. So this corner took some fire, and we're going to see why that might be. Now, let's also orient ourselves so we understand where the shots might have come from. Here's the body of the doofus, right? And you can see here, I've just put some lines on to fully track out just parallel with the roof lines. It makes it easy to orient. And here we have some sort of a structure. I think it looks like a gutter. But at any rate, there's a nice vertical line. It's between window 1, window 2. Here's the AC or whatever unit it is with 4 stack vents on it. A couple more windows down this end. People were standing over here seeing him as he crawled up across here to here. And here is the ladder that he came up, and this was the big wide open parking lot full of police that he just casually strolled through, totally unmolested. Not entirely. They saw him and they called somebody. Right? Who should we call? Okay. So zeroing in, just dialing in so you can see it just a little clearer just in case, but this drain pipe is our visual reference for the front of this building. And if we just track straight back from that drain pipe according to these ribs on this raised seam metal roof, which is what it looks like to me, then we can get to where he was, presuming they didn't move the body. I don't think they did. Here's his gun, mysteriously put 4 rows away, facing upwards like that. And here's something, and here's something. I don't know what these things are. I'm presuming this is a backpack, but I don't have any data on that. What I would love to see is pictures that show me how much brass was around him and where it was arranged, so that we could tell how many shots he'd actually taken and then how many rounds were actually still in the magazine of his rifle. I want to know what position exactly his rifle was in when they got there. I want to know everything. I hope they release that body cam footage. Okay, so this is the stage that Trump was on. Okay, this is post scene, right? See all the garbage and chaos in this picture. But what I want to point out is that this lectern got knocked a little bit. It was perfectly square. It was here all the way to the front. He had his arm on it at the time that his ear got grazed. So he's there with an arm on the lectern. So that means he was somewhere either on this white line or on this side of the white line. Just places him on the stage because the stage has got, fortunately, it's a visual cue that allows us to see a few things, including this. So here what I've done is I've traced the metal roof straight back from that drain pipe here, right in between these windows. And that means that the shooter would have been sitting right here. And that means that if this first shot was taken and Trump was standing north or to the left side in this aspect of this walkway, which we would have said he would have been on that side of the walkway, right? Then that first bullet that grazed him could have only ended up somewhere in this vicinity. Now, I don't know if you saw, but there was this exciting moment where a hydraulic line got hit. It wasn't in the tractor here. It was in the lift. And this lift had its boom all the way up, and I don't know what it was doing, holding speakers up or something. And you saw this, and the whole lift arm went gunk, right? So that means that a bullet, at least one bullet, was expended, lost its life, taking out a hydraulic line, because they're pretty robust. And these are the gun that he was shooting with a .223 round or a .556, depending on, but they're the same diameter. Tiny little thing, probably a 55 grain bullet, very tiny little thing, right? It's a 22 caliber bullet. And when something but travels very fast. When a bullet like that hits something, it tends to get pretty well destroyed. So I can't imagine that this bullet hit somebody, traveled on further, and still had what the chutzpah, the necessary oomph to take out a hydraulic line. So we're starting to count bullets here, okay? First bullet was actually captured magically on a photo taken by a New York Times photographer. Amazing photo. Assuming, making all kinds of assumptions, that this picture was taken on the horizontal, this bullet trajectory, potentially on a slight downward trajectory. I mean, it would make sense, right? If the stand was 3 or 4 feet in the air and Trump is a 6-foot guy, so his head's around 10 feet in the air, that building is, 20 feet in the air from that shooting point. Well, then you would expect a very, very slight but almost flat downward trajectory on that at that range. So that's consistent. And so with that first shot, coming from here and coming through here and coming across, there's some seats here. It's possible that if somebody was sitting in this row of seats right here, this is all folding chair seating. These are metal stands. You have one here, you got the middle one here, then there's a third one to the side, which looks exactly like this, but since it's tipped, you can't see it as easily. But it has a screen, and it has some seating, and it's here. That first bullet that missed him is up high enough that I can't imagine that it's going to hit anybody down here, though, because there's 4 feet plus another 6 feet. So that bullet's up here 10 feet in the air, relatively flat trajectory. Pew! So first shot, grazes an ear, don't know where it ended up. But it's no longer, it can't have done any more damage than that, is my thought. Now, interestingly, right after the shot, but before Trump has put his hand up to his ear, which comes away with blood on it, I want you to just notice this guy's expression right here. That's an expression of somebody who's laser locked on, and he already sees the blood. He can see the damage. He's already, he can see something that's happened. That's what that expression says to me right there. I don't know who this guy is. He's a teleporter from the 1960s. And this is the woman here that a lot of people were sort of had questions about. They said, well, she had this Biden sign, but it's actually a Joe Biden, you're fired sign. My interpretation of that mystery woman is that she is somebody with very low situational awareness, just was not tracking what was happening. But this guy, he was tracking what was happening all the way. And you can see that look on his face. There's damage going on there. So, again, I shouldn't have to dispense with this, but for everybody out there who's been trying to think or rationalize or torture this to think that maybe Trump set this up, you're insane, okay? The idea that somebody like Trump would risk his life by having somebody take a shot at his head from over 400 feet away so that he could score a few sympathy points is one of the dumber ideas out there, right? Obviously, this wasn't all staged because Corey Compertor is dead. 2 other people, very critically wounded. Other people more lightly wounded. We have audio. There's actual bullets in the air. Like, there's just data everywhere. So if you are the kind of person who would think, oh, that data doesn't matter, I'm still going with they set it up, right? You're grasping at your last hope of trying to stay sane in some way, but you're insane. You're nuts. Okay. All right. This was not a setup. Okay. Here's the shot that hit the hydraulic line. Again, tracking from the building, coming through here. It hit this piece just above. I don't know if you can see it here, but there is right here. This is the hydraulic line that's hit. There is a hydraulic ram, a piston that lifts a cylinder that's right there, and it hit the just on top of that. And this is all hydraulic fluid just spraying out into space. So this second or third shot came in here and must have hit this right about here. You can see it's already tracking off a little bit. Trump would have been right about where my red dot is. So this shot's just a little to the side. No surprise that you have somebody with iron sights, which I believe still that he had iron sights on that platform, the AR platform, whatever he was using. But anyway, that chambered in 223, that, about 1 second between each of those first 3 shots. Takes a little time to get yourself settled back down. And even with that, jerking the trigger, doing whatever, it's not surprising that one of these tracked off a little bit. And we know where it went. One of the bullets hit Trump's ear and sailed off harmlessly afterwards, if my analysis is right, and assuming the bullets actually came from there and they didn't come from somewhere else, which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. And then secondarily, another bullet was expended, gave up its life, taking out a hydraulic line. Couldn't do any further damage. This is important because we have to start tracking the shots, and so that we can find out if there was a second shooter. Okay. Now, where the people actually got injured, this is a still from a video. People are pointing wildly, and one guy's like, he got shot in the head. So this is where Corey Compertor, he's being attended to right here. There, if we said this is the back of that stage right, if you're on the stage to the right, the stands all the way to that side, the stands that would have been closer to the building that the shooter was on, allegedly. That upper corner is where Corey was hit, and also there's another gentleman, his friend is attending to him here. He's lying down here. So both of them were in the upper left part of that stand, and they got hit. And of course, this is the state police taking Corey Compertor down, and this is a woman who's got her hand on the other guy who's been shot, and he's being attended to here. You can see there's blood all over the place. And then here's the other gentleman lying down. And his friend is attending to him, but he's been hit here. So we know where the most serious injuries happened. And then there was a gentleman who was struck pretty seriously all the way on the other side, on the other stands as well. So, I mean, clearly this is top left stand, stage right stands, top left corner as we're facing it. And you can see the damage there. Now, this is the other gentleman here, who they say he was in the front row, but I don't know what that means. Because we can clearly see him being taken down from the top of the right stance. It's got a flag thing wrapped around there, and you can clearly see. So there's actually 2 injuries. First one, this gentleman coming down with a flag shirt, maybe whatever that is going on, slightly younger. He's been hit. He's been hit holding his front chest. And then we got this guy here. He's been so that second gentleman being taken down was critically injured. I don't know his current condition. So those people, if they're getting hit up here, now we can begin to understand where the bullets came from and what might have happened. So at a minimum, we have those first 3 shots happening. One sails by harmlessly. One takes out the hydraulics. That only leaves one to do all kinds of damage. So we're at a loss here. This is not, we can't possibly account for those first 3 shots doing this damage. We have to go with the second sets of shots that came. All right. Now, why didn't that sniper team, that we've all seen them sitting on the red roof, they're like, looking, glassing, and then they get down and they're looking. I think that they're confused. I don't think they had a good shot, okay? And the reason for that is, let me get my laser pointer back up. I think these guys didn't shoot because they were located right here, and this is a pretty good accurate reflection, that red dot, of where the shooter was hanging out, okay? And look what's in between these guys. This is a tree right here. This is a tree. Their view would have been occluded at best. They would have had to shoot through a tree. They might not have been clear what they were looking at. As far as they know, the local cops have that roof line secured. I can imagine lots of confusion while you're peering through a tree, trying to figure out, am I about to shoot one of the good guys? You don't know, right? So you got to call it in. It must have been confusing. I'm going to bet that the actual kill shot was taken from here. Counter sniper team 1. They would have had a clearer line of shot back to here. Then, of course, here was Trump and the eyewitness. You saw the BBC interviewing that guy with the bright red hair and the Trump hat. He would have been able to see what was going on from here. And, of course, this is where all the police cars were parked. Wall Street Journal, same thing. They're pointing out the same thing. They got him accurately located in their diagram. I appreciate that. Here's the counter snipers. There's a tree in the way. No bueno. There's a clear line of shot down here. So again, from a standpoint of setting this up, like the putting a shooter in that spot was good because at least one of the sniper teams couldn't see him at all, or not very well, potentially not at all, depending on the condition of that tree. And he had a clear line of shot to Trump. Now, in between here and here, you will see that upper left corner of that set of stands right there where those two bad injuries happened. So it's approximately 430 feet, again, for a quality shooter, kind of a chip shot. Here's another view taken from aerial just sometime after the shooting, but you can see here, again, there's that tree. It's right in the way. I've put these, this diagram had put the shooter here. That's wrong. At least according to the body position, the shooter was right here. So there's a tree in the way. That's no good. This person has a much clearer shot potentially, this sniper from here. And I think we saw that happen. Now, here's where it gets really weird. And this is why you have to actually capture everything in real time. So that's what we've done. A lot of people, me and my team, we've captured a lot of the things. We've stored them safely. We've put them down because these are the things that get memory hold pretty darn quick. And so we got to talk about the water tower real quick. Now, listen, before I do, we know that eyewitness reports are some of the least reliable things you can count on. However, when 3 eyewitnesses give you the same thing, they all point at the grassy knoll or whatever, you can start to give it a little more credence. Let's listen in. I got 3 things for you to listen to.
First crack of the gunfire, and I just screamed, it's the sniper, and he was firing down toward the water tower.
That's firing down toward the water tower, firing down from the water tower, I think she meant to say, but maybe I'm interpreting too much. Listen in.
First crack of the gunfire, and I just screamed, it's the sniper, and he was firing down toward the water tower.
That's what we're hearing.
And yeah, and then at that same exact moment, there was a spray from the right side of the stage that I thought was some type of gas, or not gas, but smoke.
Sure.
Blind up front.
Yeah,
he said it was, he heard it was gunfire, hitting the hydraulic on the...
Right, so they're here in agreement, like from the water tower. Now, why would they say that? There's the water tower right there. Obviously, it's in very good position to have a clear view, a clear line of sight to Trump over here, given how the trees are positioned. How about this one as well? I'm going to skip forward. Let me see if I can skip forward on this one or not.
Sharpshooter shot to the left. He killed the gentleman in the water tower here. Now,
Sharpshooter to the left, killed a gentleman in the water tower here. Very clear, very, very clear what this woman just said.
I called my husband at home who's watching TV. He said, I thought Trump hurt his ear when he went to the ground. But he said, no, on TV they showed before Trump hit the ground, the ear was bleeding. So that sharpshooter went across. Trump turned his head. His ear must have been nipped. and it killed somebody in the stands over to the left.
Don't know about that either.
Could you see anyone injured besides the blood on the former president?
All I saw was the gentleman from Beaver County who spoke earlier in the day, who was running for the State House Representative, Elmore, I know his name. He had a white shirt on, and I saw him come from that left stands where the people were mostly shot. I think there were several. They said 3 medevacs left here. Blood was down the right side of his... He wasn't shot, but you could see that he was next to somebody who must have been bleeding profusely, because he either helped them and ran, rubbed against them, or tried to get them help or something. It was covered. So I knew that he was near somebody. That was my first indication that somebody was actually shot, when I saw his blood on his shirt.
Aaron, when did you realize that, hey, this might not be fireworks, this might be something else?
When they got Trump down on the ground. And then we were just so concerned that he wasn't hit, because we couldn't. It happens so fast. It's really hard to process.
Listen to this.
I guess if you have it on your camera to see the exact minute, you can tell. But when he got up, he did not look bad at all. What I've heard coming out here is now they feel that there was 2 shooters on both sides. So they got the one on the tower on this side, but the one on the right side they never got. So that's why they wanted us to leave immediately, because they thought there's still a shooter out there somewhere. So there could be in these woods around Butler. And I feel sad for our country. I feel sad for everybody,
All right, so she's very clear about this, that there were 2 shooters. They were told there might be a second shooter, so that's why they had to get out of there. Obviously, it's the confusion of a very chaotic scene. I get that. However, remember, they stood Trump up and walked him right out of there when they had no way of knowing if there was a second shooter or not. And again, a little later, I'm going to be presenting to what's rock solid evidence, auditory evidence, that there was a second shooter involved. Absolutely the case. So let's, again, water tower. This is sort of Google Earth, it's a little cartoony. Maybe the trees are higher or lower. I don't know. But you can get the layout of this. So when she said, to the trees off back to the right, I assume she's talking about those trees there. But of course, that's where law enforcement would have been pretty heavily concentrated, at least for the local law enforcement. You can see the building there on the left where the shooter was ostensibly firing from. But you can tell pretty clearly that, these people kept saying the water tower, the water tower, the water tower. And I mean, it's such an obvious spot. Now, let's talk about the water tower real quick. This is another dog that did not bark. Doesn't make any sense. The story we're supposed to believe is that our side, the good guys, did not have anybody in the water tower. And listen, if you and I formed a paintball team and I gave you, operational security for defending this territory, the first thing you do is you grab the highest point. It's just the first thing you do. It's like you don't even have to think about it. This is, again, the level of incompetence that we are expected to participate in is unthinkable. I can't do it anymore. F these people. You take the water tower. There's not a single chance in the world that you would not be using the water tower. The water tower would be one of the first places you would set up. At least you have an observer up there. At least you have somebody with binoculars. At least. At most, you have some snipers up there, right? Because you have complete commanding field of fire and view of almost everything from that point. Okay, that's pretty awesome. Didn't happen. Allegedly, they came, they scoped the whole area, decided that building roof that right there with the orange dot on it, which should be over a little towards the parking lot, another several chunks of space. But we're supposed to believe that they identified that as a place of significant concern and somehow missed the water tower. Hadn't just somehow professionals came and scoped this the day before and they missed the water tower. That's what you're supposed to believe. And then they missed this 20-year-old doofus wandering around who then walked up to the front door of where the cops were hiding out, who were inside because it was decided to secure the building from the inside. The building that had a ladder on the outside that no cop was stationed at, right? I get it. You're like, oh, you know what? It was really hot that day. It was like $110 on the roof. Nobody wanted to be up there. But what you would also want to do is maybe just station somebody at the ladder in that alcove where you can be in the shade. It's just it's impossible to believe this stuff. It's just absolutely impossible. So let's keep going.
Hit the ground, and he kept standing. I was like, you got to get down, boy. You got to get down. They're going to shoot you. Because if they would have had a machine gun, they could have taken us all out. So then we laid there for a while. We saw different places where the gunshots were at. And then they
different
got
places.
President Trump down, Secret Service did, and they took him out of there and got him off of the stage, and he was bleeding. And so then my son and daughter-in-law was back behind us, back behind the fence, and we was worried about them. We couldn't call them, and so we started trying to go after them then when they finally let us up, and they had been right by the fence where the other shooter was. There was one I heard in the water tower. There was one by the fence.
And still, obviously,
There
initial
was
reports.
one
but
in
what
the
we do
water
know-
tower, and there was one over there, right? So shooters. So again, look, people can have very different memories about what's going on. Eyewitness, I get all of that. But by the time you have 3 separate people all saying water tower, how come you haven't been hearing about this water tower yet? Why hasn't it been part of the diagrams? Like, I can show you hundreds of diagrams because this is all I've been doing for like 3 days straight now. You know, the BBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, like they all have these diagrams and they don't include the water tower, okay? So, I mean, the water tower, the most obvious spot that you would set up is somehow being left completely out of the storyline, out of the narrative, even though we have these eyewitnesses. And by the way, let's all have a prayer for these particular eyewitnesses, because people who have this kind of knowledge have a bad history going up against the blob, right? We just know this at this point in time. Let's just be completely transparent about that. So look, that's the story I have about that. I've got a bunch of data that says there were 2 shooters. I'm going to go into this. I've already gone on long enough here. So this is for my subscribers at Peak Prosperity. It's still early, but I'm pretty sure I can prove this. And so we're going to chew on it. That's what we do. We have a really amazing community of people. We got professionals in every possible dimension you could imagine. So we're going to hive mind this. We're going to figure this out like calm, rational adults. And we're going to decide for ourselves what our own conclusions are. And we're not going to be drawn into all this insane stuff that they want us to believe. Like, why would you talk about the water tower? You can secure buildings from the inside. You know, well, we made a phone call 26 minutes before shots happened. You know, come on. This was a setup. This was an inside job. No question about it. This is a level of incompetence. It's impossible to understand any other way. So until such time as they can prove to me and you that this was complete incompetence, we're going to have to go with they let it happen, right? This was an inside job. It is unthinkable how poorly the details come together on this. But of course, this is actually par for the course in setups like this. You try and control what you can. They get a little sloppy, but they trust that their brethren in the media are going to be there to cover for them and present BS and run interference and fail to report on the things that really need to be reported on. Something's different this time. NBC and ABC are now coming in asking actual questions. It's refreshing, right? You think you've noticed that? They're like, wow, that actually almost sounded like an interview should. Suddenly they're back on the job. Well, this is Operation Mockingbird Media is what we have to deal with here in the United States. So they've been allowed to go after this. So now the question is, which is fascinating, why are we going to seemingly nudge up against the truth this time? Don't know. But we do know that there are agents out there who are attempting to take our country down. Maybe this was maybe they weren't meant to miss. Maybe this was supposed to incite something a lot bigger. If that's the case, be careful, folks, because that means this wasn't the last time, right? They're going to try again. And until we root these people out, I mean, I can't believe Cheadle hasn't just been fired summarily, but of course we have the Biden administration and they love incompetence, right? I mean, look at Kamala Harris, right? They just love their incompetence. As long as you're a loyal incompetent, they're kind of incompetent, right? And they do all kinds of really nasty, dastardly things. So I'm sorry if that's upsetting to anybody, but that's just how it is at this point in time. And we're going to keep calling the shots like we see them. So with that, come on back with me to Peak Prosperity everybody who wants to, because this is a big deal. And it has huge implications. All right, for everybody else, thanks very much. Please don't let this story go away. All right, bye for now.